72 hours ago, she was the perfect Silicon Valley wife. Now she's about to destroy a billion-dollar empire. When tech billionaire David Harrison publicly introduced his mistress as his real wife at a corporate gala, he thought he'd checkmated his pregnant spouse Sarah. He was wrong. What he didn't know was that his new lover was a professional spy. His marriage was built on lies, and his suitable wife had skills he never imagined. This is the story of the most sophisticated corporate takedown in American history. Buckle up, because this revenge is about to get very, very expensive. If you love stories where the underdog wins big, hit that like button and let's dive in. The security footage would later go viral on every social media platform. A pregnant woman in designer clothes, calmly directing a locksmith while her billionaire husband pounds on the glass doors of their $12 million mansion. But that was 72 hours later. Right now, Sarah Mitchell Harrison was still living the lie. She stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Palo Alto home, watching the California sun paint the Silicon Valley skyline gold. 6 months pregnant and glowing. She was the picture of success. Harvard MBA turned tech wife, supporting her husband's empire from the shadows. Morning, beautiful. David's voice carried that Texas drawl that had charmed investors out of billions. At 45, he commanded every room he entered. Self-made, ruthless, brilliant. The trailer park kid who built quantum industries into a cloud computing giant. Sarah turned, hiding her phone screen. Her secret consulting account showed $2.3 million. Money David knew nothing about. Insurance, she told herself. Every smart woman needed insurance. Big day, she said, adjusting his tie. The initial public offering announcement was tonight. Quantum Industries would officially become a $10 billion company. You ready? Born ready. His kiss was perfunctory, distracted. Jessica's picking me up early. Board meeting before the gala. Jessica Romano, David's new business development director, 28, brilliant, and watching David with hungry eyes at every company event. Sarah had noticed. Wives always notice. I'll meet you there, Sarah said. Karen's doing a final interview for the Wall Street Journal piece. David's jaw tightened. Keep it light. Tonight's about celebration, not investigative journalism. After he left, Sarah opened her laptop. Her consulting firm, Mitchell Strategies, had 3 clients, all quantum competitors, all paying handsomely for insights into Silicon Valley trends. Nothing illegal, nothing that violated her prenup, but David would see it as betrayal. Her phone buzzed. Karen Wells, her best friend since Harvard. Ready for tonight's circus. Karen's voice carried that familiar edge. Investigative journalists never truly relaxed. Define ready. Sarah moved to David's study. Something had felt off lately. Late night calls, whispered conversations with lawyers. Karen, hypothetically, if someone wanted to hide assets before a major corporate event, how would they do it? Hypothetically, offshore shell companies, Cayman Islands, classic billionaire playbook. Karen paused. Sarah, is everything okay? Just curious. But Sarah was already scanning David's desk. A folder marked Meridian Holdings caught her eye. Inside, bank statements showing $200 million moved to accounts she'd never seen. Her blood ran cold. Those transfers were dated last month, right after they'd confirmed the pregnancy. Karen, I need you to research something. Quietly. Always. What am I looking for? Meridian Holdings, and run a background check on Jessica Romano. Deep dive. How deep? Sarah stared at the bank statements. To the bottom. That evening, Sarah stood in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont San Francisco. 500 of Silicon Valley's most powerful people milled around her. CNBC cameras captured every moment. This was David's coronation. He took the stage, Jessica beside him in a scarlet dress that hugged every curve. Sarah felt the familiar knot in her stomach. "Thank you all for joining us," David began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Tonight marks not just Quantum's initial public offering, but a new chapter in American innovation." Applause thundered. Sarah smiled, playing her part. "But before we celebrate business success, I want to celebrate personal truth." David's tone shifted, became intimate, dangerous. "For too long, I've lived according to other people's expectations. Tonight, that changes." Sarah's smile faltered. This wasn't the speech they'd rehearsed. "I want to introduce someone very special." David extended his hand to Jessica. "Ladies and gentlemen, Jessica Romano, my partner in business and in life, my fiancée." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, camera flashes like gunfire. Sarah felt the world tilt. Blood rushed in her ears. "Jessica will be taking over as Chief Operating Officer," David continued, his arm around Jessica's waist. "Sarah, my soon-to-be ex-wife, will be stepping back to focus on family matters." 500 pairs of eyes turned to Sarah. CNBC's cameras found her in the crowd, her humiliation broadcast live to millions. Jessica leaned into the microphone. "Thank you all. David and I are excited to build Quantum's future together. As for the past," she looked directly at Sarah, "well, some chapters need to close for new ones to begin." Sarah's hands shook. She pressed them to her belly, protecting her unborn child from this nightmare. David had orchestrated everything. The timing, the public setting, the cameras. This wasn't impulse. This was execution. Karen appeared at her side. "We're leaving, now." But Sarah couldn't move. She watched David kiss Jessica on stage. Passionate. Possessive. A deliberate desecration of 7 years of marriage. That's when she noticed the security guards positioned near the exits. David's men. They weren't here to protect. They were here to ensure she couldn't leave until his moment was complete. Her phone buzzed. A text from David's lawyer. Divorce papers had been filed. Her access to all accounts was suspended, effective immediately. This wasn't betrayal. This was warfare. And David Harrison had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had no idea who he was dealing with. The drive back to Palo Alto was a blur of city lights and rage. Karen drove while Sarah sat in passenger seat silence, her mind calculating. David thought he'd checkmated her. He was wrong. "Talk to me," Karen said. "What's our next move?" "First, I secure the house." Sarah's voice was steady now, clinical. "Then I find out exactly what he's been hiding." The mansion loomed before them, all glass and steel and architectural ego. Sarah had never liked it. Too cold, too much like David, but it was half hers, and she intended to keep it that way. 24-hour locksmith, she told Karen. "Find one." While Karen made calls, Sarah walked through her home with new eyes. Everything was evidence now. Every photograph, every document, every hidden safe. David had played his hand too early. He'd revealed his strategy before securing his assets. Amateur mistake for a billionaire. The locksmith arrived at midnight, a weathered man with tired eyes who asked no questions about changing every lock on a $12 million house. Cash talks. Sarah had learned that from David. "Ma'am," the locksmith said as he worked, "you sure about this man like that's gonna be upset?" "I'm counting on it." By 3 a.m., the fortress was secure. Sarah sent a single text to David keycards deactivated, entry denied until further notice. His response came immediately. "You can't do this. I own half that house." Sarah smiled as she typed back, "So do I. And I'm the one who's home." Her phone exploded with calls. David, his lawyer, Jessica. Sarah let them all go to voicemail. She had work to do. David's study yielded treasures. The Meridian Holdings folder was just the beginning, hidden behind a false back in his filing cabinet. Sarah found documents that made her blood sing with possibility. Quantum Industries hadn't just moved money offshore. They'd been manipulating their stock price for months. Artificial scarcity, coordinated insider trading, classic securities fraud, and Jessica Romano wasn't just David's new girlfriend. According to the contracts Sarah found, she was a corporate consultant from Horizon Corporation, Amazon's biggest cloud computing rival. This wasn't romance. This was corporate espionage. Sarah photographed everything with her phone. Every document, every signature, every smoking gun. David thought he was discarding dead weight. Instead, he just armed his most dangerous enemy. At 6 a.m., her doorbell rang insistently. Sarah checked the security monitors. David stood at the front door, his face purple with rage. Behind him, two large men in suits. Private security. She activated the intercom. "Good morning, David. Lovely evening last night. Open this door right now. Sarah, this is my house. Our house, and I'm not dressed for company. I have lawyers, Sarah. I have judges. I can have you removed. You have a lot of things, David. What you don't have is a key." Sarah leaned closer to the microphone. "Oh, and David, you might want to check your Meridian Holdings account. I think there might be some irregularities." The color drained from his face. He knew she'd found something. "Good. We need to talk," he said, his tone shifting to negotiation mode. "We do. Through our lawyers. I'll have mine call yours. Sarah, be reasonable. You're emotional. Pregnant. You're not thinking clearly. I've never thought more clearly in my life." She cut the connection. Her phone rang immediately. "Karen." "I have news about Jessica Romano," Karen said without preamble. Real name Victoria Chen. She's not just Horizon's consultant. She's their head of corporate intelligence. And Sarah. She's been investigating Quantum for 2 years. Sarah felt pieces clicking into place. What kind of investigating? The illegal kind, securities fraud, market manipulation. The FBI has been building a case. The FBI. There's more. Victoria/Jessica approached David 6 months ago, right around the time you got pregnant. This whole thing, the affair, the public humiliation, it's all part of a larger operation. Sarah's hand went to her belly. "What kind of operation?" "The kind where David goes to prison, and you might be collateral damage." The house suddenly felt less like a fortress and more like a trap. If the FBI was involved, if this was bigger than corporate espionage, then David's public betrayal might have been desperation, not cruelty. But that didn't explain the hidden assets, the offshore accounts, the systematic financial abuse. "Karen, I need you to do something else. Find out who really benefits if David goes down. Who profits when Quantum collapses?" Already on it. "But Sarah, there's something else. Something about Jessica Romano that doesn't add up. What, she doesn't exist? Victoria Chen worked for Horizon until 8 months ago. Then she vanished. No employment records, no digital footprint. It's like she became Jessica Romano overnight." Sarah stared out at the California mountains, thinking, if Jessica was federal law enforcement, she wouldn't need such an elaborate cover identity. If she was corporate espionage, she wouldn't risk such public exposure. Which meant Jessica Romano was something else entirely, something much more dangerous. "Karen, I think we're looking at this wrong. What if Jessica isn't trying to destroy Quantum? What if she's trying to steal it? The silence on the phone was answer enough. Sarah Mitchell Harrison had spent 7 years playing the perfect wife. Now it was time to play the game that mattered. And unlike David, she understood the most important rule. The person who looks weakest is often the most dangerous. Mike Chen didn't look like a lawyer who could destroy billionaires. Rumpled suit, coffee stains on his tie, and an office that smelled like Chinese takeout and legal desperation. But Karen had promised he was the best divorce attorney in Northern California, and Sarah needed the best. Mrs. Harrison, Mike said, studying the documents Sarah had brought. This is either the stupidest financial crime I've ever seen, or the smartest. I can't decide which. Explain. Your husband moved $200 million offshore right before going public. That's securities fraud. But he documented everything. Usually, criminals try to hide their crimes. Sarah leaned forward. What if he wanted someone to find it? Then he's setting up the world's most expensive frame job. Mike set down the papers. Who does this benefit if David goes to prison? Jessica Romano becomes acting CEO. The board would rubber stamp it rather than lose the IPO. And Jessica Romano is corporate spy, possibly federal agent, definitely not who she claims to be. Mike whistled low. This is bigger than divorce court, Mrs. Harrison. This is RICO Act territory. They were interrupted by Mike's secretary. Mr. Chen, FBI agents here to see Mrs. Harrison. Sarah's blood froze. Send them in. 2 agents entered. Professional, serious, wearing the kind of suits that screamed federal budget. The woman, tall and severe, spoke first. Mrs. Harrison, I'm Agent Martinez. This is Agent Cooper. We need to discuss your husband's business activities. I assume you have a warrant. We have questions. You can answer them here, or we can continue this conversation at our field office. Mike stood. My client will cooperate fully. What specifically are you investigating? Agent Cooper opened a folder. Quantum Industries has been manipulating their stock price for 18 months, moving assets offshore to avoid SEC oversight, classic pump and dump scheme. And you think my client was involved? We think Mrs. Harrison was the bagman. Agent Martinez placed photographs on Mike's desk. These are surveillance photos of Sarah meeting with representatives from 3 different companies, all quantum competitors, all within the last 6 months. Sarah stared at the photos, her consulting meetings, completely legal, completely above board. But in this context, they looked like corporate espionage. Those are legitimate business meetings, Sarah said. Meetings where you discussed Quantum's internal strategies, general industry trends, nothing proprietary. Mrs. Harrison. Agent Cooper leaned forward. Your husband is going to prison. The question is whether you go with him. Cooperation could be beneficial. Mike intervened. What kind of cooperation? Full disclosure of all financial assets, testimony regarding Mr. Harrison's illegal activities, and most importantly, information about Jessica Romano's role in this conspiracy. Sarah felt the trap closing. What if I told you Jessica Romano isn't who you think she is? The agents exchanged glances. Explain. Jessica Romano doesn't exist. The woman you're investigating is Victoria Chen, former Horizon Corporation employee. She's been playing David for months. Agent Martinez smiled coldly. Mrs. Harrison, Jessica Romano is Agent Jennifer Ross. She's been undercover for 2 years building this case. Your husband has been under federal surveillance since before your marriage. The room spun. Sarah gripped the chair arms, feeling nauseated. This wasn't corporate espionage. This wasn't a love triangle. This was a federal sting operation, and she was the target. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Your husband has been laundering money through shell corporations for 3 years, moving drug cartel funds through legitimate tech investments. Jessica Romano was assigned to gather evidence." "Drug money." Sarah's voice cracked. $50 million from the Guerrero cartel, cleaned through Quantum's overseas operations. Your husband isn't just a white-collar criminal, Mrs. Harrison. He's a money launderer for narcotics traffickers. Mike was writing furiously. "What evidence do you have of my client's involvement?" Agent Cooper placed more photographs on the desk. Sarah at a coffee shop with a man she didn't recognize. Sarah entering a bank she'd never been to. Sarah signing documents she'd never seen. "These are fabricated," she said. "Mrs. Harrison. We have financial records showing payments from known cartel fronts to your consulting company. $2.3 million over 6 months. Sarah's secret account. Her insurance money. Someone had been using it to frame her." "I want a lawyer," she said. "A different lawyer." Mike looked hurt but nodded. "That's your right." As the agents prepared to leave, Agent Martinez turned back. "Mrs. Harrison, your husband threw you under the bus last night. He's claiming you were the cartel contact. The money laundering was your operation. He's positioning himself as another victim." After they left, Sarah sat in silence. Mike offered coffee, water, tissues. She refused everything. "Sarah," he said gently, "this is bad. Federal conspiracy charges carry 20-year sentences. Mike, I need you to understand something. I've never met a drug dealer in my life. I've never laundered money. And until yesterday, I thought my husband loved me. I believe you, but believing and proving are different things." Sarah stood, decision crystallizing. "Then we prove it. All of it." "How?" "By finding out who Jessica Romano really is, because she's not Agent Jennifer Ross either." The pieces were finally coming together. David's public betrayal hadn't been cruelty or strategy. It had been panic. Someone was playing a game bigger than corporate espionage or federal investigations. Someone who needed both David and Sarah to go down. Someone who understood that the best way to steal an empire was to eliminate everyone who could claim it. Sarah Mitchell Harrison had spent her career analyzing financial patterns. Now she was looking at the biggest pattern of her life, and she was starting to see who was really pulling the strings. But first, she had to stay out of federal prison. The arrest warrant came at dawn. Sarah watched through her bedroom security monitor as FBI agents surrounded the house. Professional, efficient, inevitable. She dressed carefully, navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. If she was going to be perp-walked in front of cameras, she'd look dignified doing it. The charges were read in her living room: conspiracy to commit money laundering, wire fraud, racketeering, each count carrying a potential 20-year sentence. "Mrs. Harrison," Agent Martinez said as they cuffed her, "you have the right to remain silent." "I understand my rights." Sarah's voice was steady. "I also understand you're making a mistake. The evidence says otherwise." As they led her outside, Sarah saw the media circus: 50 reporters, 10 news vans, and enough cameras to fill a stadium. Someone had tipped them off. Someone wanted this public. "Mrs. Harrison," shouted a reporter, "did you know about your husband's cartel connections?" "Sarah, are you cooperating with federal investigators? Is it true you're pregnant with David Harrison's child?" She kept her head high, her expression neutral, but inside, her heart was breaking. This wasn't just humiliation. This was character assassination. The booking process was deliberately degrading. Fingerprints, mugshots, strip search. They were sending a message billionaire wives aren't untouchable. In the holding cell, Sarah finally allowed herself to cry, not from fear or shame, but from rage. Someone had orchestrated this destruction with surgical precision, and she was beginning to suspect who. Mike arrived 6 hours later with bail paperwork and grim news. "The prosecution offered a deal," he said as they drove away from the federal courthouse. 10 years if you testify against David. Full cooperation, asset forfeiture, the works. What does David's lawyer say? David fired his lawyer. He's representing himself now. And Sarah, he's claiming you seduced him into the money laundering operation. He's saying you threatened to leave him if he didn't help your consulting business. Sarah laughed bitterly. Of course he is. There's more. The media is running with the story that you're the mastermind. They're calling you the Black Widow of Silicon Valley. Based on what evidence? Leaked federal documents. Someone's feeding information to reporters faster than we can respond. They drove in silence until Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Harrison. The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. This is Jennifer Ross. We need to talk. Sarah's blood chilled. The real Agent Ross. Where are you? Safe house in Oakland. Come alone. You're in more danger than you realize. Why should I trust you? Because I'm the only person who knows Jessica Romano's real identity. And Mrs. Harrison, she's not working for the FBI. An hour later, Sarah sat across from Agent Jennifer Ross in a nondescript apartment overlooking San Francisco Bay. Ross was nothing like Jessica Romano. Short, stocky, serious. No glamour, no seduction, just competence. Jessica Romano is Natasha Volkov, Ross said without preamble. Russian intelligence operative. She's been building this operation for 3 years. Russian intelligence. The FSB doesn't just steal military secrets anymore. They steal entire companies. Jessica's job was to destroy Quantum from the inside, then facilitate a buyout by Russian tech interests. Sarah felt the room spinning. The cartel money. Real, but not your husband's operation. Natasha's been using it to frame both of you. She needed David discredited and you eliminated. Clear path to control Quantum's technology. But the FBI arrested me. Ross looked uncomfortable. Natasha's been feeding us false intelligence for months. We thought we were investigating corporate fraud. She was actually orchestrating corporate theft. You're telling me this entire investigation is compromised. Worse, the arrest warrants, the evidence, the media leaks, all part of Natasha's plan. She's been playing us like a chess game. Sarah stood, pacing. What does she want? Quantum's cloud architecture. It's being used by the Pentagon for classified projects. In Russian hands, it would compromise American national security. And to get it, she needs to destroy David and me. She needs to own Quantum, which means eliminating anyone with legitimate claim to control. Sarah's phone buzzed. Text message from Jessica Romano. Sorry about the arrest. David wants to meet. Says he has information that could clear you both. Tonight, 8 p.m., Quantum offices. Ross read over Sarah's shoulder. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Sarah was already moving toward the door. But it's also an opportunity. Sarah, this woman has killed people. Professional assassin masquerading as a corporate consultant. Then it's time someone turned the tables. Back at her house, Sarah made 3 phone calls. First to Karen, asking her to research everything about Natasha Volkov. Second to Mike, asking him to prepare emergency motions to dismiss all charges based on prosecutorial misconduct. The third call was to David. Sarah. His voice was broken, desperate. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you. I got Jessica's message. Jessica's not who we think she is. I found evidence. She's been manipulating both of us. I know exactly who she is. David. Then you know we need to work together. She's destroyed everything. Our marriage, our reputations, our company. Sarah almost laughed. Our marriage was destroyed the moment you publicly humiliated me on live television. I was being blackmailed. She had photographs, recordings. She threatened to destroy Quantum if I didn't cooperate. Cooperate with what? The money laundering, the offshore accounts. She needed someone to take the fall, and she chose us. For the first time in days, Sarah heard genuine fear in David's voice. David, where are you right now? Quantum offices. She wants to meet tonight. Says she has a way to clear both our names. David, listen to me very carefully. Don't trust her. Don't meet with her alone. It's too late. She's here. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, mind racing. David was walking into a trap, but he was also the only person who could corroborate her story. If Natasha eliminated him, Sarah would be left holding the bag for everything. She had one choice: save the man who had betrayed her, or lose everything forever. Some choices aren't really choices at all. The Quantum Industries building rose 40 stories above Palo Alto, a glass and steel monument to David's ambition. At 8 p.m., it should have been empty except for security guards and janitors. Instead, every floor blazed with light. Sarah parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot. Her pregnancy made stealth difficult, but adrenaline sharpened her focus. David was in danger, and despite everything, she couldn't let him die. The security guard at the front desk didn't recognize her. Jessica's influence, no doubt. I'm Sarah Harrison, she said. CEO David Harrison called a board meeting. The guard checked his computer, frowned. Ma'am, I don't show any board meetings scheduled. Emergency session, securities fraud investigation. That got his attention. He made a call, spoke in hushed tones, then handed her a visitor badge. 40th floor, executive conference room. The elevator ride felt endless. Sarah checked her phone. She'd activated the voice recording app before entering the building. Whatever happened tonight, there would be evidence. The 40th floor was eerily quiet. Executive suites stretched in both directions, all dark except for the conference room at the end of the hall. Sarah could see figures moving behind frosted glass. She crept closer, staying in the shadows. You've outlived your usefulness, David. Jessica's voice carried clearly through the glass. I did everything you asked. The offshore accounts, the stock manipulation, the public divorce. I destroyed my marriage for you. You destroyed your marriage because you're weak. A real man would have eliminated the threat entirely. Sarah pressed herself against the wall outside the conference room. Through a crack in the door, she could see David sitting at the conference table. Jessica stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, possessive, predatory. The federal investigation is over, Jessica continued. Sarah will take the fall for everything. You'll be seen as another victim. Quantum stock will crash, and my associates will acquire it for pennies on the dollar. Your associates? Did you really think this was about romance? David, you're not that charming. Jessica moved around the table, facing David. For the first time, Sarah saw her true face. Cold, calculating, dangerous. The Russian government has invested considerable resources in this operation. Quantum's cloud architecture is worth more than your entire company. In the right hands, it could cripple American cyber defenses. Your FSB. Among other things, Jessica reached into her purse, withdrew something Sarah couldn't see. The plan was elegant. Seduce the CEO, manipulate him into compromising situations, frame his wife for money laundering, then acquire the company through bankruptcy proceedings. What went wrong? You fell in love. Jessica's voice dripped with disgust. Pathetic. You actually started believing your own performance. Sarah's breath caught. David had been as manipulated as she was. Jessica hadn't just destroyed their marriage. She'd created a fake one. The pregnancy complicated things, Jessica continued. A martyr with an unborn child generates too much sympathy, but a dead martyr, that's just tragic. What are you saying? Sarah's going to have an accident tonight. Distraught wife, facing federal prison, takes her own life. Very sad. Very final. David shot to his feet. No, that wasn't the plan. Plans change. Jessica raised her hand, and Sarah saw the gun. Small, professional, silenced. You can die defending her or live as a widower. Your choice. You're insane. I'm efficient. That's when Sarah kicked in the door. FBI, nobody move. It was a lie, but it worked. Jessica spun toward the door, gun raised. David dove behind the conference table. Sarah rolled left, using her pregnancy to sell the desperation. Agent Ross sent me, Sarah shouted. Buildings surrounded. Jessica's eyes narrowed. She was too well trained to panic, but she was calculating odds. One pregnant woman versus one professional assassin. Not great odds for Sarah. Mrs. Harrison, Jessica said calmly, keeping the gun trained on Sarah. How good of you to join us. Saves me a trip. David, get out of here. I'm not leaving you. For the first time in months, Sarah heard genuine emotion in her husband's voice. Whatever Jessica had done to him, whoever she'd turned him into, the real David was still in there. How touching, Jessica said. Reconciliation in the face of death. She raised the gun, finger tightening on the trigger. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of her unborn child. The shot was deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. Sarah opened her eyes. Jessica Romano, Russian spy and master manipulator, lay crumpled on the conference room floor. Behind her stood Agent Jennifer Ross, smoking pistol in hand. Building really is surrounded, Ross said grimly. David emerged from behind the table, shaking. How did you know? Sarah called me. Told me you were walking into a trap. Ross secured Jessica's weapon. Good thing, too. Natasha Volkov has 17 confirmed kills. You wouldn't have survived the conversation. Is she dead? Sarah asked. Ross checked for a pulse. No. Tranquilizer dart. We need her alive to unravel this operation. As federal agents flooded the conference room, Sarah felt David's arms around her. For a moment, they were just two people who'd survived something terrible together. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair. For everything. The gala, the humiliation, believing her lies. We both believed her lies. Can we fix this? Our marriage, our life. Sarah pulled back, looking into his eyes. The man who'd publicly destroyed her was gone. This was the David she'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. Vulnerable, human, real. I don't know, she said honestly, but we can try. Agent Ross approached with paperwork. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, you'll need to come with us. Full debriefing. The federal charges against you are being dropped, but we need complete statements about everything Jessica Romano did and said. As they walked toward the elevators, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The war wasn't over. There would be congressional hearings, media scrutiny, corporate restructuring. But for the first time since that terrible night at the gala, she and David were on the same side. Sometimes the only way to save a marriage is to survive its destruction. 3 months later, Sarah stood before a congressional subcommittee, swearing to tell the truth about the most sophisticated corporate espionage operation in American history. "Mrs. Harrison," said Congressman Bradley, "please describe how a Russian intelligence operative infiltrated quantum industries." Sarah looked out at the packed hearing room. C-SPAN cameras, national media. David sat in the front row, wearing the supportive husband expression he'd perfected since their reconciliation. Natasha Volkov, operating as Jessica Romano, spent 2 years building a psychological profile of my husband. She identified his vulnerabilities and systematically exploited them. And you were unaware of this manipulation? Completely. Jessica Romano was charming, professional, brilliant. We had no reason to suspect espionage. It was mostly true. Sarah had suspected the affair, but never Russian intelligence. Federal investigators found evidence that you conducted business with Quantum's competitors. How do you explain that I maintained a small consulting practice, completely separate from my husband's business? All clients were informed about potential conflicts. Yet you concealed this from your husband. I maintained financial independence as a precaution. Many corporate wives do. What she didn't say, she'd been planning her escape months before Jessica arrived. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. You're next. David took the witness chair with practiced confidence. 3 months of media training showed. How did you first meet Jessica Romano? She approached us about consulting. Her credentials were impeccable. Harvard MBA, Fortune 500 experience, glowing references. All fabricated. All fabricated. The FBI discovered that every credential was constructed by Russian intelligence. When did you first suspect something was wrong? When she pressured me into risky financial decisions. When I resisted, she became persuasive. Meaning, compromising photographs, recordings. She threatened to destroy everything if I didn't cooperate. Sarah watched her husband perform. He was telling the truth, but not the whole truth. He'd enjoyed Jessica's validation. The blackmail came later. Why did you publicly announce your divorce so dramatically? She convinced me it was necessary to protect Sarah from investigation. She said if Sarah appeared to be an innocent victim, she might avoid prosecution. Elegant. Plausible. It painted David as protective rather than cruel. And you believed this. I was being systematically drugged. Natasha had been slipping mood-altering substances into my food for months. That part was true. FBI toxicology confirmed prescription amphetamines in David's system. This committee commends your courage in exposing this operation. After the hearing, they posed for photographs outside the Capitol, the reunited couple, the American success story. You were perfect, David murmured as cameras flashed. So were you. That evening, they flew back to California. Charges dropped. Congressional hearing successful. Quantum's stock recovered. To new beginnings, David said, raising his champagne. To surviving the storm. They touched glasses. For a moment, Sarah almost believed it. They'd survived hell together. Then David's phone rang. Harrison. His voice shifted to business mode. How much emergency board meeting tomorrow? He hung up, face grim. What's wrong? Horizon Corporation just made a hostile takeover bid. $50 billion, 20% above market value. Sarah's blood chilled. Horizon Jessica's former company. They fired her 8 months ago. But Sarah was thinking, David, what if Jessica wasn't working for the Russians? The FBI confirmed it. Natasha Volkov, FSB operative. What if the Russian connection was cover for something bigger? That's impossible. Is it a hostile takeover right after we're cleared of all charges? You're being paranoid. But Sarah's mind was racing. The congressional hearing hadn't been vindication. It had been theater. Who benefits most from quantum being in chaos? His face went pale. Horizon. And who would know exactly how to manipulate us? Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolling through news articles. Horizon's CEO is Marcus Webb, former NSA, former CIA, 20 years in intelligence. So he'd know how to run a false flag operation, make it look like foreign espionage when it's corporate theft. David was quiet. If you're right, we just handed them everything. We made ourselves look weak, like we'd accept any offer to put this behind us. The jet hit turbulence. 7 months pregnant. Sarah gripped her armrest. We need to assume everything Jessica told us was a lie, including her death. She was shot. I saw it. You saw a tranquilizer dart. Did you see the body? David's face went ashen. The FBI said she died in custody. Or they said that because someone wanted us to believe she was gone. If Jessica was alive, if she worked for Horizon, if everything had been set up for corporate takeover, then they'd been playing checkers while their enemies played chess. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Horizon Corporation takeover announcement hit financial news at 6 a.m. Pacific time. By 7, Quantum's stock had jumped 15%. By 8, David was fielding calls from board members and investors, all asking the same question: would he recommend shareholders accept the offer? Sarah watched him pace their bedroom, stress radiating from every gesture. 3 months of rebuilding had just evaporated. I understand your concerns, Frank, David was saying to the board chairman. But $50 billion is significantly above market value. Sarah's laptop chimed with an encrypted message from Karen. Found something. Emergency meeting. 1 hour. Starbucks on University Avenue. I have to go, Sarah told David as he ended his call. Where the board meeting is in 2 hours. Research. I'll be back. Karen was waiting with documents spread across the corner table like a war council briefing. You were right, Karen said without preamble. Jessica Romano never worked for the Russians. Prove it. Natasha Volkov died in a car accident in Moscow 3 years ago. Real death. Real body. Someone stole her identity for the false flag operation. Sarah felt her suspicions crystallizing. What about the FBI investigation? Agent Jennifer Ross exists. She's real FBI. But she wasn't running an undercover operation on Quantum. She was investigating Horizon Corporation for defense contract fraud. Defense contracts. Horizon has been systematically underbidding Pentagon contracts, then subcontracting to overseas companies, primarily Chinese firms with suspected intelligence connections. Sarah stared at the documents. So when Jessica approached the FBI as Natasha Volkov, she was redirecting the investigation away from Horizon toward your husband. Classic misdirection. And Agent Ross believed her. Ross thought she was recruiting a Russian asset. She had no idea she was being manipulated by American corporate espionage. Sarah's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Congratulations on your congressional performance. You played your part beautifully. Meet me tonight if you want to save your company. Marina Green, 8 p.m. Come alone. Jay. She's alive, Sarah whispered. Karen read over her shoulder. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, but it's also an opportunity. Sarah, this woman destroyed your marriage, nearly sent you to prison, and now she's trying to steal your company. Because she thinks she's the smartest person in every room. People make mistakes when they think they're untouchable. That afternoon's board meeting was corporate theater. David presented Horizon's offer with careful neutrality. The board asked probing questions about valuation and strategic fit. I recommend 72 hours to evaluate all options, David concluded. Board members nodded, began filing out. Sarah watched them go, wondering how many were already compromised. After the meeting, David wanted to come with her to Marina Green, but Sarah refused. She asked for me alone. If you're there, she'll disappear. Then wire yourself up. FBI surveillance. She'll detect that. This woman is a professional. So what's your plan? Make her overconfident. Let her think she's won, then turn the tables. At 7:30, Sarah drove toward Marina Green. Jessica Romano was waiting on a bench facing the bay, elegant in a tailored black coat. Hello, Sarah. Pregnancy suits you. Cut the small talk. What do you want? To offer you a choice. Fight Horizon's takeover and lose everything, or cooperate and retain significant ownership. Cooperate how? Convince David to recommend shareholder acceptance. In return, you keep executive positions and equity stakes. Sarah sat down, maintaining distance. And if we refuse, Horizon acquires Quantum through hostile means. David gets forced out. You lose everything. We survived your last attempt to destroy us. Jessica laughed like breaking glass. Survived? You haven't realized what I've done yet. Enlighten me. The congressional hearing was theater. You performed beautifully as wronged innocents. America loves redemption stories. So now everyone believes you're victims rather than willing participants in corporate fraud. When Horizon's investigation reveals the truth about your offshore accounts, the betrayal will be devastating. Sarah's blood chilled. What truth? That you weren't victims of my manipulation? You were willing partners. The offshore accounts were your idea. The stock manipulation was David's strategy. That's a lie. Is it you maintained secret business relationships with competitors for months? You hid millions from your husband. You systematically gathered inside information. That was legitimate consulting? And David moved company assets offshore while manipulating stock prices. All documented. All illegal. Sarah felt the trap closing. You framed us. I documented what you were already doing. Under my influence. You look like victims. Without it, you look like criminals. Jessica reached into her purse, withdrew a tablet showing financial records, emails, recorded calls, everything Sarah and David had done, cataloged and preserved. This is insurance. Cooperation keeps it buried. Resistance makes it front-page news. Sarah stared at evidence of her own guilt, not manufactured evidence, but real documentation of real crimes. How long have you been planning this? 3 years. Since before I joined Quantum. Why destroy two people you'd never met? Because Quantum owns cloud architecture that Horizon needs to dominate defense contracting. Your husband was too stubborn to sell voluntarily. Jessica stood, smoothing her coat. 48 hours to decide. Recommend Horizon's offer or watch everything crumble. As she walked away, Sarah called after her, "What's your real name?" Jennifer Walsh, former CIA operative, current executive vice president of Horizon Corporation, and soon to be your new boss. After she left, Sarah sat alone watching fog roll in from the Pacific. Everything she'd believed was wrong. Jessica had never been Russian intelligence. She'd been American corporate espionage. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Jessica was right about the evidence. Sarah and David had been cutting ethical corners long before she arrived, and now they had to choose between public humiliation and corporate surrender, unless Sarah could find a third option. Agent Jennifer Ross looked exactly like someone who'd spent 20 years hunting spies and corporate criminals. Sharp eyes, sensible suit, the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. She sat across from Sarah in a downtown San Francisco coffee shop, reviewing the evidence Karen had compiled about Horizon Corporation. "This is impressive detective work," Ross said finally. "But it's all circumstantial. Jessica Romano being Jennifer Walsh doesn't prove criminal conspiracy." "What would prove it?" "Direct evidence of Horizon using corporate espionage to manipulate federal investigations. Recorded admissions of criminal intent." Sarah leaned forward. "What if I could get you recorded admissions? From Jennifer Walsh, she's too smart for that. She's also overconfident. She thinks she's won. People make mistakes when they think they're untouchable." Ross studied Sarah carefully. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A sting operation. I convince Walsh that I'm ready to cooperate with Horizon's takeover. Get her to admit the truth about manipulating your investigation. That's extremely dangerous. If she suspects you're recording her, you could end up like some of Horizon's other problems." "Other problems?" 3 former Horizon employees have died in the last 2 years. Car accidents, heart attacks, suicide, all had access to sensitive information about defense contracts. Sarah's hand went to her belly. 8 months pregnant now. She was acutely aware of vulnerability, but surrender meant losing everything. "Agent Ross, if I don't do this, Horizon Corporation will own one of America's most sensitive technology companies. They'll have access to Pentagon cloud systems, classified data, military communications. And if this goes wrong, you'll be dead. Then help me do it right." 2 hours later, Sarah sat in David's office explaining her plan. He listened without interruption, his expression growing more concerned. "Absolutely not," he said when she finished. "I won't let you put yourself and our unborn child at risk. David, if we don't take this risk, we lose everything anyway. Horizon gets quantum, Walsh wins. Our daughter grows up with living parents who made the smart choice to survive." Sarah moved to the window overlooking Palo Alto. "I've been thinking about something Walsh said. She's been planning this for 3 years. Since before she joined our company. So 3 years ago, what was Horizon's strategic position relative to quantum?" David pulled up financial data. "They were behind us significantly. Their defense contracts were being canceled due to performance issues. And now they're positioned to dominate the entire sector. If they acquire us, they'll control 60% of Pentagon cloud services. David, what if Jessica Romano wasn't Horizon's first attempt to penetrate quantum?" He turned to look at her. "What do you mean? What if they've been planting people in our company for years?" Sarah was already at David's computer, pulling up employee records. "Show me everyone hired in the last 3 years. Cross-reference with previous employment at defense contractors." The search yielded 47 names. One stood out immediately. "Robert Chen," Sarah said. "Hired 2 years ago as chief financial officer. Previous employment 15 years at Horizon Corporation." David's face went pale. "Robert's been handling all our federal contract negotiations, and our offshore financial operations, and our board communications." They stared at each other as implications sank in. Robert Chen had been inside Quantum for 2 years, with access to every sensitive decision. "David, we need to assume our entire senior management team is compromised." "That's impossible. I handpicked these people." "You handpicked people with impressive credentials. How many did you personally verify?" David was already pulling up more personnel files. "Jesus. Marcus Webb, our head of international development. Former employer, Horizon subsidiary. Patricia Williams, our head of legal affairs. Former employer, Horizon's law firm. They've been building this takeover for years, placing their people, gathering intelligence, waiting for the right moment." Sarah's phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer Walsh board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Horizon's final offer. Time to make your choice. She's moving fast, David said. Too fast. Because something's making her nervous. David was already reaching for his phone. I'm calling an emergency board meeting tonight. Full security sweep. David, if we're right about the other plants, half your board might be compromised, too. Then we find out who we can trust. That evening, Sarah watched from the observation gallery as David convened the most important board meeting in Quantum's history. 12 directors sat around the polished table. Ladies and gentlemen, David began, we've discovered evidence of systematic corporate espionage targeting our company. I need to know who I can trust. He placed a document in the center of the table. Sarah watched board members' faces as they read it. Most showed appropriate shock, but Patricia Williams, head of legal affairs, went very still, completely neutral, professional blank, the reaction of someone who already knew what the document contained. Patricia, David said quietly, you don't seem surprised. I'm processing the implications. This is serious. It's not an allegation. It's evidence. Financial records showing payments from Horizon to shell companies. Money funneled to Quantum employees. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. David, I think we should discuss this privately. I think we should discuss it right here. That's when Patricia Williams made her mistake. Instead of maintaining cover, she reached for her phone. David was faster. He grabbed her wrist, preventing the call. Who were you calling? Patricia. My lawyer. Your lawyer. Or your handler. The boardroom erupted in the chaos. Sarah slipped down and confronted Patricia directly. How many others? Sarah demanded. Patricia looked at her with something approaching respect. You're smarter than Jennifer thought. How many others are working for Horizon? Enough. And Mrs. Harrison, tomorrow's board meeting is happening whether David wants it or not. The votes are already locked in. As security escorted Patricia out, Sarah realized they'd won a battle, but not the war. Horizon's takeover would proceed on schedule, unless she could convince Jennifer Walsh to make one final mistake. The emergency board meeting was set for 9 a.m., but Sarah arrived at Quantum headquarters at 6. The building was nearly empty, just security guards and maintenance staff preparing for what everyone knew would be a historic day. She made her way to David's office, where he was reviewing documents with the 3 board members they still trusted: Robert Morrison, the company's original investor; Helen Zhang, their head of technology; James Patterson, their operations director. Any word from the FBI? Sarah asked. Agent Ross has Patricia Williams in custody, David replied. She's talking, but not fast enough. The board meeting is in 3 hours. What about the other Horizon plants? Marcus Webb and Robert Chen both resigned last night, effective immediately. Rats leaving the sinking ship, or regrouping for the final assault. Sarah's phone chimed. Text from Jennifer Walsh. Congratulations on cleaning house. Ready to discuss surrender terms instead of responding. Sarah called the number. Walsh answered on the first ring. Sarah, I was expecting your text. I want to meet. One final negotiation before the board vote. There's nothing to negotiate. Horizon's offer is final. There's always something to negotiate. You taught me that. A pause. Sarah could almost hear Walsh calculating. Marina Green, 1 hour, same as before. No, Quantum headquarters. Conference room 40B. If you want our cooperation, you come to us. That's not happening. Then you don't get our cooperation. You get a hostile takeover, years of litigation and congressional investigations into Horizon's espionage operations. Another pause. Longer this time. 45 minutes. I come alone. You come alone." "Agreed." After Sarah hung up, David grabbed her arm. "This is insane. She's not going to walk into our building. She will if she thinks she's won. And right now, she thinks she's won." Conference room 40B was on the 35th floor, with panoramic views of San Francisco Bay. Sarah arrived early, testing the recording equipment Agent Ross had provided, tiny devices with transmission capability that would send everything directly to FBI servers. Jennifer Walsh entered precisely on time, looking like the corporate executive she'd always pretended to be. Tailored suit, confident smile, the aura of someone accustomed to winning. "Sarah, you look tired. 9 months pregnant will do that." "When are you due?" 3 weeks, which is why I want this finished." Smart, maternal instinct overriding pride. Walsh sat across from Sarah. "So, what are your terms? David and I retain executive positions in the merged company. 20% equity stake, guaranteed board seats." "Generous. What do I get in return?" "Our recommendation to the board. Public support for the merger. No litigation challenging the acquisition." Walsh smiled. "And what makes you think I need your cooperation? I have the votes. Sarah, the merger is happening regardless." "Because you need us to manage the transition. Quantum's technology is proprietary. Our key engineers are loyal to David. Without our cooperation, you acquire a company that loses 60% of its value within 6 months." "True, but there are other ways to ensure cooperation." "Meaning?" "The evidence I showed you at Marina Green still exists. Your financial crimes, David's securities fraud, all documented. Cooperation ensures it stays buried." Sarah leaned forward. "Jennifer, can I ask you something? How long have you been planning this specific operation?" Walsh's eyes gleamed. "Since the day I realized David Harrison was too stubborn to sell voluntarily. Some people respond to financial incentives. Others respond to personal destruction. And you chose personal destruction. I chose efficiency. Break the man. Acquire the company. Much cleaner than years of competitive warfare. What about the federal investigation? How did you manipulate Agent Ross? Child's play. Feed her intelligence about foreign espionage. Redirect her investigation toward Quantum. Let her think she's uncovering a Russian operation." Sarah felt the recording devices capturing every word. "And the money laundering charges? Real money, fake source. The Guerrero cartel funds were actually Horizon Black budget operations. You framed us with your own money. I invested in your destruction. Excellent return on investment." Walsh was relaxed now, enjoying her triumph. "Sarah, you have to admire the elegance. 3 years of preparation, multiple backup plans. What about the Russian identity Natasha Volkov? Stolen from a dead woman. Perfect cover for a false flag operation. And Agent Ross never suspected. Agent Ross was a tool, a very effective tool, but still just a tool." Walsh checked her watch. "This has been illuminating, but we have a board meeting in 90 minutes. One more question. When you're testifying in federal court about this conversation, will you admit that Horizon Corporation has been systematically infiltrating defense contractors?" Walsh froze. "Excuse me. The recording devices. Jennifer, this entire conversation has been transmitted to FBI servers." For the first time since Sarah had known her, Jennifer Walsh looked genuinely surprised. "You're bluffing." "Jennifer Walsh, former CIA operative, current executive vice president of Horizon Corporation. You are under citizen's arrest for corporate espionage." Walsh stood slowly. "Sarah, you have no idea what you've just done." "I think I do." That's when the conference room doors opened. Agent Ross entered with 4 FBI agents, weapons drawn. "Jennifer Walsh, you're under arrest." As they cuffed Walsh, she looked back at Sarah. "This isn't over." "Yes," Sarah said. It is. The board meeting was postponed indefinitely. Horizon Corporation's takeover bid was withdrawn pending federal investigation. Patricia Williams, Marcus Webb, and Robert Chen were all arrested on charges of corporate espionage. That evening, Sarah and David sat in their living room, watching news coverage of FBI raids on Horizon Corporation offices across the country. "How did you know she'd confess?" David asked. "Because she's been playing a game for 3 years, where she was the smartest person in every room. When you're that arrogant, you can't resist explaining how clever you've been. And if she'd suspected the recording devices, then we'd have lost everything. But Jennifer Walsh's greatest strength was also her greatest weakness, which was she believed her own performance." Sarah's phone buzzed. Text from Agent Ross' preliminary search of Horizon offices yielded evidence of espionage operations against 17 different technology companies. "More testimony?" David asked. "Different kind this time. We're not the victims anymore." "What are we?" Sarah smiled, feeling their daughter kick inside her belly. "We're the people who brought down the most sophisticated corporate espionage operation in American history." 6 months later, Sarah stood at the podium of the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco, looking out at an audience of technology executives and federal investigators. The prosecutions of Jennifer Walsh and Horizon Corporation had become the biggest corporate crime story of the decade. "When I was arrested 18 months ago, I thought my life was over," Sarah began. "When my husband publicly humiliated me, I thought my marriage was over. When operatives infiltrated our company, I thought our business was over." Light laughter from the audience. "What I learned is that sometimes endings are actually beginnings. Sometimes the worst betrayals create the strongest foundations." In the front row, David held their 3-month-old daughter, Elizabeth, born healthy despite everything her parents had endured. Quantum Industries emerged stronger than ever, not just financially, though our stock price has tripled, but structurally. We learned that success without security is an illusion. The audience nodded. Everyone in tech had learned lessons from the Horizon scandal. "We implemented new security protocols, enhanced background checks, regular counterintelligence audits. Most importantly, we created a culture where questioning and verification are valued over blind trust." Sarah paused, looking at her daughter. But the most important lesson wasn't about corporate security. It was about personal resilience, about the difference between being a victim and being a survivor. "Jennifer Walsh told me that names are just tools. That marriage is just a tool. That love is just a tool. She was wrong about love, but she was right about tools." Sarah gestured to slides showing Quantum's new structure. "We took the tools she used against us and rebuilt our company. Transparency, where she had created deception. Verification, where she had demanded trust." During questions, a young woman stood up. "How did you rebuild trust after everything you went through?" "Trust isn't binary," Sarah replied. "It's something you build, piece by piece, day by day. David and I earned back each other's confidence through consistent actions over time." She paused. "Jennifer Walsh tried to destroy our marriage by exploiting our weaknesses. What she didn't understand is that surviving a crisis together can create strength you never knew you had." After the presentation, Sarah and David walked through downtown San Francisco, Elizabeth sleeping in her stroller. "Good speech," David said, "though you undersell how terrified we were." Terror doesn't play well at corporate conferences. They stopped at a coffee shop near Union Square. "Any regrets?" David asked. Sarah considered seriously. 18 months ago, she'd been a corporate wife with secrets and a troubled marriage. Today, she was COO of a billion-dollar company, a best-selling author, and a new mother. I regret that it took a crisis to make us honest. I regret that we let our relationship become so transactional that someone could manipulate us. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret learning that we're stronger together than apart. Elizabeth stirred. Sarah lifted her from the stroller. What should we tell her about all this when she's old enough? The truth, David said. That her parents made mistakes. That we were vulnerable because we'd stopped really seeing each other, and that when everything fell apart, we chose to rebuild rather than walk away. You know what I think about most that night when Jennifer Walsh offered us a choice: cooperate or lose everything. She thought those were our only options. I realized she was asking the wrong question. It wasn't about choosing between bad options. It was about creating better ones. Sarah, David said as they walked, the Defense Department offered us a new contract yesterday. Exclusive cybersecurity consulting for all Pentagon cloud operations. 5-year deal, $2 billion annually. Sarah stopped walking. That's bigger than our entire current business. It would transform Quantum into the nation's primary defense technology contractor. What does accepting mean? We become a target for every foreign intelligence service, congressional oversight, federal security clearances, lifestyle restrictions. Our daughter grows up under federal protection. Sarah looked down at Elizabeth's peaceful face. What does declining mean? We stay successful, but not essential. Someone less experienced becomes the primary target. That was the real question. Not what was best for their family, but what was best for national security. I think we have to take the contract, she said finally, even knowing what it costs. Elizabeth is going to grow up in a world shaped by technology. I want that world protected by people who understand that trust is national security. It's going to change everything. Everything changed when Jennifer Walsh walked into our lives. The question is whether we control the change. Elizabeth opened her eyes, looking up with that serious baby expression. What do you think, sweetheart? Sarah asked softly. Should we help protect your country? Elizabeth cooed softly. I'll call the Pentagon tomorrow, David said. They walked home as the sun set over San Francisco Bay. Tomorrow would begin their transformation into guardians of American technological security. Tonight, they were just parents walking home, grateful to have survived and emerged stronger. Sarah's phone chimed. Jennifer Walsh, sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Think she'll appeal? David asked. Probably, but she's not our problem anymore. What is our problem? Making sure the next Jennifer Walsh doesn't succeed. How? By remembering that the most dangerous enemies look like friends? Elizabeth stirred, ready for dinner and sleep. Her parents had learned that love, like trust, was something you built rather than found. And sometimes, the best way to build a future was to refuse to let the past define it. What did you think of Sarah's ultimate power move? Would you have taken the deal or pushed for criminal charges? Drop your thoughts below. Smash that like button if this story had you on the edge of your seat, and subscribe for more incredible true stories of people who refuse to stay down. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.